I started off with one business and I put all my time, energy and money into it. And then went, this is a bit risky now. I'll start another business with a partner and I'll then start to invest in properties and I'll start to invest in different asset classes, which means I've not got all my eggs in one basket. You've hedged your bets, I guess. The danger is if you try and do that from day one, you might end up doing lots of things not very well, do one really, really well, and then diversify after, which I think is exactly what you're saying.
Hello, my name is Christian Rodwell, the Membership Director for WealthBuilders, and welcome to this week's episode of Wealth Talk. And this week, we're back with another exclusive head-to-head episode. Our head-to-head series pitches WealthBuilders CEO and founder Kevin Whelan up against CEOs from a diverse range of businesses to share insights, which we hope you'll learn a lot from. And today, our CEO guest is Nick James, a highly successful UK entrepreneur and the mastermind behind Expert Empires, one of the leading business events for coaches, consultants, and expert business owners. And with over a decade of experience in the entrepreneurial world, Nick has built 4 separate 7-figure businesses and is passionate about helping experts grow their ventures, scale to 6 and 7 figures, and create sustainable success through his masterminds and events. And through Expert Empires, Nick has brought global business icons like Gary Vaynerchuk, Grant Cardone, and Sir Alan Sugar to the UK stage, providing invaluable insights and inspirations to thousands of attendees. So in today's head-to-head, you'll hear why Nick is so passionate about helping the next generation of entrepreneurs, why you should laser focus on your business before you think about diversifying into anything else, and how running an events business through COVID caused him to hold his hands up on social media to admit that he'd made an untimely mistake. Okay, it's time for me to hand over now to Kevin for his exclusive head-to-head conversation with the CEO of Expert Empires, Mr. Nick James.
Today, we've got the most amazing owner and founder of Expert Empires. Nick, nice to see you.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. Great to be on. Thanks for inviting me. Looking forward to our conversation.
Well, we're going to talk about all things business growth, wealth creation, personal development, and I'm sure we'll get some ahas and maybe a few oh no's as well. But let me say off the bat, I've got to say I resonate so much with you. Not least we both support mediocre football teams, but with a passion. Tell us a bit more about that.
Well, I think my football team historically has been very mediocre and is currently performing above average. Because I'm an Aston Villa fan. Who's your team, Kevin?
I'm a Newcastle United fan.
Okay, so I think we're probably both slightly above average right now, but historically have probably been, very mediocre, as you say.
But I suppose the other thing is we're both sort of mediocre at golf, would like to be better. But I think I share most with what you say is your love of helping people, giving people a world-class, I picked that up from your website, amazing kind of framework, world-class experience, and the love of young entrepreneurship and legacy. So lots of things that we can dive into. And I know we want to talk about an event you've got upcoming, which is very, very timely, coming up in October. So we'll make sure we talk about that. But as always, there's a story. What's your story? Why did you get into this? There's got to be a reason for it. What was the catalyst that got you moving from being a young man into the entrepreneur that shaped those businesses today?
Yeah, thanks. Good question. I suppose I'll start the answer to that question by referencing something you just shared, which is, we're both passionate about championing and supporting young entrepreneurs. I guess my journey started in 1994. I was 12 years of age, and my mum took me to a Tony Robbins seminar in Hawaii. I was extremely fortunate, not just a little bit, extremely fortunate to get that opportunity. Very, very few young people, teenagers, youths get that opportunity. And so, I was very, very fortunate to have that opportunity to go and learn, being in an environment of personal development, of self-improvement, of entrepreneurship, of around people that were aspiring to be more, do more, have more. And so, that was really a kickstart for me. I spent most of my teenage years traveling all over the world with my mum. all over America, Europe, Australia, the Far East. First of all, learning and being participants in Tony Robbins trainings and events. And then later on, my mum actually became a trainer for Tony's organization, and I became one of the event team, if you like. So I kind of worked in and around Tony's events for 3 or 4 years in my late teens, early 20s. It was probably like the best apprenticeship, the best training that I could possibly have got for what I do today. So I run events now, and, I spent many, many years being in and around who I believe is the best in the business when it comes to running events around personal development, self-improvement, business, wealth, etc.
Well, wow, what a brilliant introduction to the whole world of personal development. So what did you do after your teenage years then? What was your first experience of the employment world?
I went to university, and what I always say is I certainly learned more within a few months of leaving university than I did in a few years of being in university. And that's because I actually left university and started my first business, which was an epic failure because, quite frankly, I didn't know how to run a small business. Like, what I learned at university was how to operate in a role within a big company. I actually did a business studies degree, and I think it's false advertising to call it business studies, because really it was studying how big businesses and corporates operate. And what I really wanted to learn was how do small businesses, how do entrepreneurs operate? I actually think now by the way, we're talking 20 years ago, but I think now, they do actually have entrepreneurship degrees at university. Now, I don't know how the curriculum differs to when I was there, but it was a lot about, for example, the e-commerce section of the curriculum. We were studying the Tesco website. That doesn't help me when I'm in my early 20s and I'm starting, a brand new business from scratch. So for me, I learned a lot more within a few months of leaving university because my first venture was an epic failure. But then my first kind of real employment was actually working in a small entrepreneurial business. It was an NLP training company, so neuro-linguistic programming. For those that aren't familiar, this is a collection of tools and strategies and techniques to program the mind for success. So I worked for an NLP training company. Shout out to my mentor, Andy Harrington. We're still really good friends to this day. And I worked in his company in sales for a couple of years. And in those 2 years, being around that small business, I learned about marketing, and I learned about sales, and I learned about systems and processes and customer service and finance and all of these key ingredients. So when I left that business to start my own business, I was much better prepared than I was first time round.
So do you find that the people you serve now, was the coaches, the guides, those people who are experts in their own right or building their expertise, started their life as employees?
I'd say in one of my trainings or my events, let's say we got 500 people in the room, which is fairly typical for one of our larger events, one of our larger conferences. If I say, who here has at some point been an employee in a large organization, 80% of the people will probably raise their hands. And the reason they're coming to my events and my trainings is because either they've decided they no longer want to be that and they want to start their own business. But in the majority of cases, they've already taken that step. They've already made that leap, if you like, and started their business. And then they're no longer maybe a startup, but they're now either in the early stages of just starting to build their brand and their products and their services, and starting to build the business. And in some cases already well established, with teams and multi-million pounds worth of revenues and kind of everything in between.
So tell us a bit more about the events then. You've mentioned it a couple of times, and the business is called Expert Empires. And I suppose it was always interesting when you talk to a business owner, why did you choose that name? What's the power in the name?
That brand name actually came about later. It wasn't the origin, but it came about because back in 2016, early 2017, I'd created a concept in my mind for an event that I wanted to run specifically for coaches, consultants, speakers, trainers, authors, agency owners. I would put them all in the category of experts. And the concept was that I'm going to run this amazing event. We're going to bring the best speakers in the world to London, to the UK. It's not a free event or it's not a cheap ticket. It's a significant investment to come along because I'm spending a lot of money, investing a lot of money in speakers. It will be high quality. It won't be a pitch fest. I'm going to put on a really great quality experience. And so I remember sitting with my team back then. I remember vividly, we had a team meeting in my lounge and there was 4 people plus me. So there was a marketing person, 2 salespeople and 1 kind of admin customer service person. And I was like, right, so here's the vision. Here's what we want to create. Let's come up with a name for it. And they all gave their suggestions. And I went, well, I think this is an event for experts, helping them build their empire. I like the alliteration of expert empires. What do you think? And they went, we think it's crap, Nick. We don't like that at all. And here's all the reasons. And I went, look, I'm not wedded to it. Come up with some other ideas. And we came up with 5 or 6 others and just none of them felt quite right. And that was on a Friday afternoon. And I remember sleeping on it and agonizing over it. And I went, you know what? By the way, time was ticking. We had a date set for the event and I needed to get it out there. And so over the weekend, I literally, unbeknownst to my team, built a little landing page. I got a mate to do a little logo. By the way, shout out James Dodkins, who did our original Expert Empires logo. We still use it to this day. He didn't charge me a penny. We've made a lot of, we've made a big impact and a lot of money from that logo. And I literally just built a little page and sent an email out and posted it on social and went, hey, I've got this thing. It's called Expert Empires. And on Monday, the team were like, we hadn't decided yet. I was like, I couldn't wait any longer. It was too late. And here we are. That was early 2017. Here we are 7 years later and Expert Empires now means something. It's now a thing. It's now got a reputation. It's got brand recognition. Anyway, long story, but here's the reason I tell you that is because I do think people overthink brands and brand names. Like people think Nike, what an amazing brand concept and name. When Phil Knight first came up with Nike, it didn't mean anything. But obviously it's got Greek mythology background, but it did. Like nobody felt a certain way about Nike. Now people have an emotional attachment to that brand, to the logo, to the word. Same with Netflix or Amazon or Tesla or all of these. They don't mean anything when they're created. I just don't think it matters that much because whatever the brand is you come up with, it will over time, providing you have a world-class product or service, providing you do what you say you'll do, providing you have happy clients and customers, and amazing culture around your business, the brand will have meaning later and people will start to feel a certain way about it.
I couldn't agree with you more on that one. Albeit it did take me a little while to come up with WealthBuilders because I wanted to do what it said on the tin because we're challenging the way financial plans are created in the UK. So, that was important for me to do that.
And by the way, I think the WealthBuilders as a brand is a great brand. It does what it says on the tin, as you say. And there are, many, many other words you could have used. And the point is, it wouldn't have really mattered because WealthBuilders is Kevin and it's the training, it's the concepts, it's the content, it's the experience that you create for your clients, for your customers, and then they feel a certain way. It sounds like a little bit anti-branding, and I'm not really, but I suppose your question was around why the name Expert Empires, and the origin of it was our client base were all experts in their field. The irony, Kevin, is now today you come to one of our trainings or our events and experts make up a portion of the audience, but it's certainly not the whole. So we have plenty of people who run e-commerce businesses, service-based businesses. They do stuff in, they do executive training. You wouldn't class them as the traditional expert. Kind of doesn't matter anymore because people know what Expert Empires means and stands for.
So who are your main avatars now then? If it's evolved over time, and it was the consultants, the trainers, the speakers, you mentioned the list before. Who would you say it is now, and how do you serve them? What's the unique positioning of your message and how you deliver?
Yeah, good question. So I think what we've done as our audience has broadened, so it's not as niched or specialized as it once was, is what I've done is create different programs for different types of business or different size of business. So essentially what I do is I divide all of our, one thing I will say, all of our clients are small business owners or entrepreneurs. So, up to, I think our biggest client, we've got one exception, which is a big company, but the vast majority of our clients have annual revenue of under 10 million. So they would be classed as small businesses. And then we basically divide them into 4 categories. So we've got kind of businesses that are in the very early stage. In other words, they're not yet bringing in 100,000 a year in revenue. We've got businesses that are 6-figure annual revenue turnover businesses. We've got businesses that are 7-figure annual revenue turnover businesses. And then we've got businesses that are 8-figure annual revenue or turnover businesses. And so we've got different programs, different trainings for those different phases of growth, because the problems that you experience in phase 1 are completely different to what you experience in phase 4 and vice versa.
And I suppose when people are going through that naturally, they may bump into the problems that you have to learn or unlearn new skills and techniques in order to move up that level, because sometimes what you've learned before will actually hold you back. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, 100%. I always say, what got you here won't get you there. Sometimes what got you here will prevent you from getting to the next stage or the next phase of your growth. And actually, sometimes it's a case of doing what you've done before again and again and again. So it does largely depend upon the person, the individual, the business in question. So yeah, I think we run different trainings as well based on skill sets. So business owner A might be brilliant at marketing and terrible at sales. So they need to work on sales skills. Business owner B might be phenomenal at sales, but awful at like hiring and developing a team. Person C might have an amazing team, but they really struggle with their own mindset. And so we'll have different trainings and different, I suppose, niche masterminds and niche experiences based upon where you in particular need to grow and develop.
And what's the outcome? How would they measure the success of the money they pay you to be engaged in your programs, to measure that ROI at the end and say, yes, I got a good result and this was worthwhile?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always looking at like, where were you when you started working with us? And of course, there are many ways to measure success in business, but an easy one would be annual revenue, annual turnover. And where are you 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 24 months down the line? Of course, that's not the be all and end all, because you can increase revenue but not make any profit. And equally, sometimes the game is to sustain the current level of revenue and profit in the business, but give the business owner more time and more freedom. Maybe that's success. So it does differ, but ultimately, the way that we've devised our programs is like, you're aiming to get to 100,000 a year in revenue, this program's for you. You're aiming to get to £1 million a year in revenue, this program's for you. Because that's a simple way of explaining it.
Yeah, I get the simplicity of that. It'd be interesting to talk about some of the things that we believe in Wealth Builders, just for two people with different view sets to come at it. So, I mean, you often heard the language of turnover is vanity and profit is sanity and cash flow is king and all those things. One of the things that we particularly focus on in Wealth Builders, and the entire business is predicated on it, is recurring income. So income that isn't necessarily judged by turnover, but the degree to which the revenue will be automated. So they do the work once and get paid indefinitely. Do you include that in anywhere in your mix?
I'm not wedded to any particular business model. So I'm not going to sit there and say, you have to have a recurring model. If you don't, you're a failure. But equally, I'm a big advocate of having some kind of recurring model in there if it makes sense for your business. Because for me, like the holy grail for the kind of person that I work with, a small business owner or an entrepreneur, the holy grail would be that your monthly recurring revenue is greater than your costs of operating the business. Like if you can get to that place, then you go, anything you make on top of that is a bonus. It's, it's a cherry on the top, as it were. And it gives you really kind of good core stability in your business. And of course, recurring income could be as a result of some sort of membership. In our business, by the way, the recurring income is people that are part of our mastermind program or part of our academy, and they might pay for that monthly or annually. But equally in other businesses, it could be, Netflix has a great recurring revenue model where it's a very small amount of money paid by a large amount of people. Or it could be that your recurring income comes from renting out properties that you own, for example, which I know, Kevin, both you and I do. So there's plenty of ways in which to create recurring income. And yes, I think for sure it gives you greater core stability in your business.
Yeah, in the end, I was talking to somebody on our podcast a few years ago whose name's John Morello. He runs a business called Built to Sell.
What a great book. That's one of my top 10 business books of all time. I love that book.
Well, I interviewed him and we were chatting when I met him in the Midlands, and I said, John, you've got 8 different levers that you suggest business owners can pull to get a better value for their business. It's all about selling your business in the end. I said, but if there was only one lever, what's the most important one? And he said, recurring income for the predictability. Because if you want to sell it, the number one criteria for an acquirer is the predictability of the recurring profit. And if you can get that, your business is going to be worth 7-8 times more than working 7 or 8 times harder on the same margin on normal trading income. Just a fascinating insight for me, and made me go, yeah, definitely I've got to teach recurring.
What I love about that book, Kevin, as well is even if you don't ever intend to sell your business, it's still a great read, because in building your business in a way that you could sell it, you're building a better, more healthy business that's less reliant upon you. And so I think the first thing really is to decide, what game are you playing? Are you playing the game? It's one of the questions I ask our clients, when they start working with us. I'm like, so what's your dream outcome? What's your goal? What game are you playing? Like, are you playing the game of, I want to sell, like one of my clients I've got in mind, their game, 2 of them that they're business partners, their game is to sell for at least 5 million in the next 3 years. That's their game. And there's a reason for that, because what that gives them is the freedom that they want to do what they want, when they want, with who they want. And that's their number. But if you're playing the game of, I want to run it for the next 20 years and then sell it, or I want to run it for the next 20 years and then pass it on to my kids, or whatever it might be, like, you got to decide what game you're playing before you decide how to play it.
And you think when the coaches and the consultants and the trainers get into that, they've even given their game plan, the game they're playing, a thought?
In most cases, no. I think, and by the way, I didn't give it any thought at the start either. I think, for me, the reason I started my business was I didn't want to work for somebody else. I wanted to make more money and I wanted to have more time. And, I had a skill set that I felt had some value to offer. And so that's why I started my business. It was, and actually at the time, I was engaged to my now wife, and I had a wedding to pay for. We had a child on the way, and I was like, I need to make more money and I want to support and provide. So there was no grand plan of selling it in this kind of distant point in the future. It was just short term, over the next year, 2 years. Like, what's it gonna look like? So, and I think that's okay. Like, you don't have to have the end goal or the end game in mind, because it might change as you go anyway. But I do think once you reach a certain point in your business, it is healthy and helpful to have, at least, the long-term vision for the business and for yourself. Having that defined is really helpful.
Yeah, unquestionably. And when did you make the shift in your own mind then? What happened when you started in the sofa, and then you talked about, expert empires, and you created because it was an event. When did you shift or pivot from events to providing masterminds?
I mean, to be fair, I've had, I started my first business in 2008, and Expert Empires only became a thing in 2016, 17. So there were previous iterations before that. The transition really, it was actually originally from private one-to-one consulting or done for you services. So, right back at the start, I was essentially a marketing agency, a one-man marketing agency. So I'd come to you, Kevin, and I'd say, hey, if you want somebody to write all of your marketing copy and collateral and run your marketing campaign, your next launch of a product or a service, I'm your guy and I'll do that for you. So I was then trading my time and my expertise for money, and then over time, that kind of hit a ceiling, a plateau. And I went, well, I've run out of time to sell and I'll probably hit the ceiling of what I can charge for this. So the next logical step became, I'll now teach people how to do this for themselves. And that's how it got into trainings and workshops. And then that evolved into masterminds and group coaching programs.
I think it's brilliant. You've got a training center for this. Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, kind of happened by accident, to be perfectly honest. So, for many years, I'd run my workshops, my live events, my masterminds in like a lovely little local hotel near where I live. And the business had got to a point where we'd outgrown our office space. So I was like, well, we need somewhere bigger. And I was looking at premises to operate out of, I think we had 10 people in our team. And so, we had a small office space and then a few people working remotely. And it was like, we need a bigger space. And so I found the space that we're now in and we moved into it in 2018. But I found the space that we're now in and it had way more space than I needed. But I really liked it. Like energetically, it was great. I walked in, I was like, it's light, it's open plan. It just felt really nice. I was like, this is kind of environment I want to work in and I want to bring our clients into. But it was way more space than I needed. And I was like, well, how can I justify this big space? Because I don't need it all. And I went, well, what if I stopped using the hotel and paying, we were running events probably at least 3 to 4 days a month. I was like, well, how much does that cost? And then you've got travel time and all that sort of stuff and then buying lunch and all that. I was like, how much does all that cost? And how much is the rent on the building? And I worked out that if I took the cost away of using the hotel, it was a wash. There was no difference in terms of outlay. And so we took the whole space and turned half of it into a training room, training center, and then the other half was office space. And then actually during COVID, again, our team had grown to, I think we were about 20 people around that time and we were bursting at the seams in the office. So we then we had an additional building on our plot built, which we now have as a training space. And then the other building that we originally had is now office space. So it's kind of grown and evolved. But there's been two big benefits of that. Because originally it was really just, it didn't save us any money, but it didn't cost us any more. And it allowed us to get the bigger, more expensive office. But there's two really big benefits. One is because we already paid for it, it kind of incentivized me to do more, to run more workshops, to run more events, to do more. Because I was like, I'm using it 3 or 4 days a month. It's empty for all this time. Well, might as well run more events because it doesn't cost us any more money. So it made me do more. The second thing is, I think it created an environment that we own. As I said to you before we joined, I actually don't own the property, the premises, we rent it, but it's our home and we can create it in our own vision and we can decorate and we can have posters and we can have images and we can have our models and frameworks on the wall and our team welcome people in and I'm not reliant upon hotel staff who may or may not be any good or having a nice day. So all of those things I think have made a big difference. And then bottom line, I always say this, anyone can pay a few £100 to rent a small meeting room at a hotel for a day and talk a good game. But when you rock up and see you've got 3,000-4,000 square foot, 20 plus team members and all of that, it demonstrates more credibility, authority, success. And I think that counts for a lot.
And how did the events business get affected in COVID?
It wasn't the best time to be in the events business. I think that's fair to say. I'll try and do this long story short. So we had, bear in mind, this is March 2020. I think we were towards the third week of the month, something like that. We run 2 big events a year called Expert Empires. And ordinarily we have anything between 400 and 500 people in attendance. And we had our big event happening last week of March. Obviously everybody's freaking out. It's like, by the way, this is before lockdown, but it's like people are getting really nervous about going out and worried about this thing called COVID. We don't know what it really is and how dangerous it is and who it might affect. So we had the event happening. Bear in mind, I've got speakers coming in from the US. I've got a big venue booked. I've got all of that happening. I think we'd sold 500 and just over 500 tickets to this event. And I'm getting inquiries, emails, phone calls from people saying like, what's happening? Like, I don't want to come. It feels too much of a risk. Like, I'm scared. Like, and I'm going, like, I get it, but like, I've got to run the event because we've had all these people pay us money, and I feel like I've got to deliver on the promise and do what I said I'd do. So it was really, really difficult time. And my mistake, by the way, and I'm aware I'm certainly not perfect. My mistake is because I'm actually very, pretty laid back and always very optimistic. It's probably like most entrepreneurs, most business owners. I'm eternally optimistic. So I was like, look, it'll all be fine. And like then within like another 24, so basically I did this announcement. I said, hey, like, I know this is going on. We're going ahead. Let's just say that not everybody tends to be as optimistic or laid back as I am. And so within 24 hours, check this out, Kevin, within 24 hours, I had over 100 people either email in, phone in, or comment on I did this video publicly, or comment, and people were pissed. Like really angry, and they're calling me like they're basically calling me all the names under the sun. And look, hold my hands up, I'd misjudged the vibe. I'd misread the signs. And so you asked what was it like during COVID. So it was 72 hours to turn the event from live in person in London to online. We created a makeshift studio in my office. We had no tech set up, no nothing. We literally just cobbled it together with laptops and loads of cables and cameras and whatever. And we put on this event. I basically went out to everyone. I said, look, hands up. I've misjudged this. I get that a lot of people don't feel safe. So I'm going to run it online, and here's what I'm going to do for you. First of all, going to put on the best damn event you could possibly imagine. Second of all, your ticket is still valid for the next one. Third of all, I'm also going to upgrade your ticket for the next one as a thank you for your understanding. Like I said, I made a mistake. I got this wrong. And you know what? It kind of all worked out fine. The shout out to Ed Milet, who was our headline speaker. He was so gracious. He said, look, I'm not coming to the UK because of COVID. I can't fly. Like, you don't have to pay my fee, but all I'd ask is that you donate a small portion of it to charity, which we did. And so that took a lot of the financial pressure off, because having to pay out a huge sum to him was a large part of our cost. The venue allowed us to carry what we paid forward. And so in the end, it all kind of worked out. And then just to tie off this story, obviously then there was probably 6 to 12 months of disruption, various different lockdowns, in and out of lockdown. And so actually having our own training facility helped us through that, because you'll remember at times you couldn't have more than a certain amount of people together, but we could run like a business meeting for 10 people socially distanced. Whereas if we'd have been using a hotel, we wouldn't have been able to do that, wouldn't have been allowed. So we combined online events, masterminds, trainings with small socially distanced workshops, masterminds. And you know what? Like, I think we came out of it pretty well. We didn't have to let anyone go from our team. We actually in 2020, bizarrely, we were more profitable than we had been any year before that, mainly because we didn't have the huge expense of running these events. So, every cloud has a silver lining, I guess.
Well, I think I'll pick up a couple of lessons from that. One is, when something goes wrong and you misjudge it, or somebody makes a mistake, you just go, hold your hands up, which is what you did. And I think if you tell the truth, people will buy into that. And you're always going to get naysayers in any business, but and the other thing is, you just have to deal with it, right? So you did that, knowing that your long-term picture was to deliver great value, and secured those people who would react positively to the next event because they realized you'd almost taken the risk away from them, really, which is a very, very powerful thing to do.
What was interesting to me was there was a small number of people, I'm talking, you could count them on one hand, that no matter what I said or did, they'd already made their mind up that I was an idiot, and that's fine. But what was interesting to me was the people that had complained and were most vocal before, when I took responsibility, owned the mistake, and then acted upon it and did something different, they then became our greatest fans and advocates, more so than the people that were kind of a bit chilled and blasé about it all. So I do think what you've just said, Kevin's definitely true. There's a lot of value in owning your mistakes. I mean, one of our values in our company is we practice self-awareness and humility. And I think that was a case of like, hey, a bit of self-awareness, I've got this wrong, a bit of humility, I need to do better, here's what I'm going to do instead. And that definitely resonated and changed people's opinions.
It's interesting because we have a no fault, no blame culture in Wealth Builders as well. When we realize we've got to do something about it, we call it an issue, and we just get together and fix the issue so it doesn't happen again. But we don't point fingers and we don't blame anybody at any time. So it sounds like a number of things about what you do resonate. Let's see if they resonate wider than beyond the business, because when we talk in Wealth Builders about building wealth, we're talking about building that in a richly diversified way, multiple streams of income. And you just touched on, even casually in our conversation, business, joint ventures, property you've mentioned. And of course, we do encourage people to, wherever they can, buy their own premises, if that would make sense, particularly using their pension, and then they become their own landlord and earn all that money tax-free. So that's pretty smart. But what's your view about diversifying wealth, not putting all your eggs in your business basket?
I don't know if this aligns with your philosophy, so apologies if it doesn't. I'm fairly clear on my view, which is I actually think as you're in the very early stages of building your wealth, there's benefit in having laser focus and being like, let's say, for example, you're at the very start of your journey. You go, right, I want to build wealth and I want to do that through a business. I'd go put all your eggs in that business basket and build the business as quickly as possible. Then once you get to a certain stage, I'd actually then start to diversify, because then it's about protection of that asset. And the risk is you've got all your eggs in one basket. If that business runs into trouble or fails, you've failed, you've lost everything. So my view is, and I think, I've done this over the years, is like I started off with one business and I put all my time, energy and money into it. And I built it to a certain point and then went, this is a bit risky now, because I've got all my eggs in one basket. So I'll start another business with a partner. We talk about joint ventures and collaborations. And I'll then start to invest in properties, and I'll start to invest in different asset classes. And then at a point now where I go, look, I've still got my core business and that hasn't changed, but I've also got these 4, 5, 6 different wealth building strategies sat around it, which means I've not got all my eggs in one basket. So it's kind of a precautionary measure or a safety measure, I would say. Once you've got your business to a certain point, or, for example, if you went, look, my number one strategy for building wealth is property, great. Get to the point when you're bringing in enough money from your property portfolio to live. And then I'd be like, right, don't just put more money into property, look to diversify into different asset classes. Because again, it just protects you from any kind of changes in the economy or any changes, like interest rates or how landlords are taxed, all of those things. If you're all in property, you're at risk there. And if you're diversified in different areas, then you're more, you've hedged your bets, I guess.
You're not in any way deviating from our philosophy, because our philosophy is focus your way to security, which means having enough income to pay all of your bills, and then diversify after that. So we're bang on the same message, just slightly different language, but you'd expect that coming out of the mouths of different people.
I think you hear a lot of people talk about diversification and multiple streams of income. The danger is if you try and do that from day one, you might end up, I'm not saying you will, like I'm sure some make this work, but you might end up doing lots of things not very well. What I'd recommend is do one really, really well and then diversify after, which I think is exactly what you're saying, Kevin.
So we know there are things we can control. There are things we can't control. We've got a new government. We've got something coming in. You're going to be dealing with entrepreneurs, and we'll get to your October event, but there's going to be people at their event as entrepreneurs thinking about crumbs. What's the government going to do? And while we can't worry about that, what are your thoughts about, the big picture and what governments might do that have an impact on entrepreneurs?
I'll be honest, Kevin, I try and steer clear of politics because I think as soon as you open your mouth and talk about politics, you're going to piss somebody off. And by the way, the other reason I steer clear is honestly, it's not my area of expertise. It really isn't. And so I go, look, my commentary on it is I'm relatively informed, but not highly educated. And so my view is fairly simple. I go, you and I cannot control who gets, we get a vote, don't we? And I use that vote, and I'm sure you did too, but we don't really control who goes into government, right? And we definitely don't control the policies and what happens next. A lot of time, the policies that you voted for aren't seen through. And so look, we have no control over it. In my view, there's so much that you or I or anybody controls and has control over. Like, I have complete control over my health and well-being. I have complete control over the revenue that comes into my business. I have complete control over how profitable we are. I have complete control over so many different things. My concern is that many people focus a lot on the things they can't control versus the things they can. I think that's what you were alluding to. And look, will there, for us as business owners, will there be increases in VAT, possibly corporation tax? Yes. There's going to be loads of negatives, but by the way, there's also going to be opportunities. And so I think in this case, we're talking about new government, but I'm like, there are definitely things that this new government are going to do that are going to be, that are going to not help or support small business owners. But there are also going to be opportunities that come up as a result of it as well. And you've got to look for what those are.
I mean, I think the philosophy we take is very simple. I have a slightly different way of articulating it, but that's fine. I just say I don't do politics or religion. I just deal in principles, not in politics. But if you give me a glass of red, and it has to be a nice one, I'll give you my view till I finished it, right? And it's just a bit of fun, but I just don't comment on those things. However, I do comment on this, that anybody who's building wealth needs to pay attention to the taxes they pay. So just respond when you can, and then create a strategy based on what you know. So there'll be lots of opportunities to tell business owners what they will need to think about post-October, but we're not trying to encourage anybody to do anything before the rule changes.
My view, Kevin, is no one has all the answers. Like, any government that says they've got all the answers is lying, because any policy that you can consider, like, right, we're going to make this saving here. Okay, great. So that's going to mean that the government can invest more. Or we're going to make this saving on, like, for example, we're going to increase corporation tax. It's going to bring more revenue in. Okay, great. And then you're going to use it here, in the education system or in the NHS. Okay, great. But how many small business owners are going to decide to trade overseas because they don't want the corporation tax increase? For every upside, there's a downside. For every downside, there's an upside. And look, I do not profess to have the answer to that. And I think anybody that does is full of it. Like, quite frankly, no one has the answer. And I do genuinely believe, one thing I will say, and again, regardless of political affiliation, I do genuinely believe that anybody in politics is doing the best they can. They're trying. It's an impossible job. Listen, being the CEO of a small business is an impossible job. You can't please all the people all the time. So imagine, essentially, as Prime Minister, you're the CEO of the country with all these different public services to oversee. There's no way in the world you can get it right. But I do believe that it's all, every time a policy is created, it's all done with the best intention.
You talk about that. You mentioned, 5 people thought you were an idiot just because they didn't like the way you reacted. If you're the CEO of a country, there's probably going to be a few more people think you're an idiot. The
problem with the political system is, like, when you get into office, the vast majority of the public did not vote for you. Like, so you're on a hide into nothing straight away, aren't you? That's a problem. And I'm not saying, by the way, that I've got a better suggestion of how that system should work.
But you've got some events coming up, so tell us about those, because we want to share that. We want to share what the event is, who's likely to benefit from it, who are the headlines. What do you want to share about that?
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. Our main event is called Expert Empires. We run it twice a year. The next one is the 3rd and 4th of October, so very soon, in London, at the Hilton Wembley. We've got Russell Brunson coming over from the US. He's the founder of ClickFunnels, which is a huge organization. I would say that Russell is probably the smartest marketer or one of the smartest marketers I've ever learned from or met. I think he's an absolute genius. So he's coming over as the headline speaker. We've also got some other UK based headliners, Susie Ashworth. She's amazing. Jess Cunningham, creator of Belief Coding. So we've got an amazing lineup. And really, Expert Empires, again, I created it in 2017, originally for coaches, consultants, speakers, trainers, authors, agency owners, fitness professionals to learn how to build their empire. And we talk about mindset and marketing and money, but really it's about creating an event or an environment where people who are aspirational, who are already successful, they can come together, learn from one another, collaborate, partner. You know, Kevin, you talk about collaborations, partnerships, joint ventures as a big part of your wealth building mix. And I think, you know, Expert Empires is a place where people can come together and forge those relationships and have a great time. And we've run, this is our 14th, I think, Expert Empires event, or 15th, I've lost count. It's what I love to do.
And you're expecting, 500 peeps or so?
For this one, about 400 that will be in attendance.
And you built in an extra, have you, for young entrepreneurs?
Yeah. So one of the things, as I mentioned, you know, I was very fortunate to go to Tony Robbins when I was 12 years of age. And so, funny enough, our last event, first time I'd ever done it, I created a ticket especially for young entrepreneurs, 12 to 18-year-olds. So, you know, if you have a son, daughter, niece, nephew, grandson, granddaughter, whatever, that you think would benefit from coming along like I did to Tony Robbins in 1994. If you think they would benefit from coming along, being in that environment, learning about mindset, marketing, money, business, then, we've got a special young entrepreneurs ticket available, which is available at cost price. And if you go to the website, I'm guessing the link will be in the show notes somewhere. Then you'll see all the details about that.
I want to applaud you for that because, you know, not just as a reflection of your own experience. Wealth Builders, we're passionate about financial literacy for the next generation, arguably because if you think about the principle of building wealth, you build assets that last forever. You need a plan to pass not just the money, but the wisdom onto the next generation. So congrats to you for sharing some of that wisdom. And by the way, why don't they teach this at school? I won't get you on that one. Nick, thank you very much indeed for your time today. It was a joy to spend some time with you. I look forward to being at your event, and I look forward to speaking to you again on another occasion on either Wealth Talk or Head to Head.
Thanks, Kevin. Great to see you. Thanks a lot.